this whole name change for
Right.
Billy Mills Middle School. It was actually my dad's idea, and this stemmed from the trouble. There was some racial problems over at South Middle School back in 2016, I think it was.
Yeah.
And we'll never know what the teacher said, but out of all these conversations, nobody was talking about Native Americans. There was all just black and white. It was all Black Lives Matter. It was just, there's no talk of natives.
Right.
And then at that time, I was taking a community and organizational development class over at school. And the assignment was, if you could do one thing to improve your community, what would it be? And I had no clue what the paper was going to be on.
Right.
And I kind of had an idea, but, my dad, we were talking. Well, okay, I have to back up. Back in January 2017, there was a community forum called Community Learning thing, something like that, Lawrence High School. It was attended by hundreds of people. And the Native American kids, they got up there, all the clubs got up there. They all got together, and they presented a letter to the school district, the board members. And each board member was presented this letter from all the club members. And it was Lawrence High School and Free State and the junior high schools. Wow. They all got up together, and they presented this letter. And it was heartbreaking to hear their letter. And you can find their letter on their website. But my dad and I got together. We got together later. We're like, what can we do? What can we do to fix this? Because these kids, they were not being heard. Felt like they were being marginalized. So my dad said, well, I don't know. Let's think about it. And then just maybe a week later, my daughter came up to my dad and said, hey, Miss Show, that means Grandpa, can you come and talk to our school about Native American history? He said, sure. So he gave him a lesson on Public Law 280.
Oh, wow. Really?
Really. It was a college-level lecture. But my dad told me this. He said, okay, I'm going to propose we change the name of the school to something Native American.
Right.
He said, anything for Native American contributions, culture, history. That way, if you change the name, then all these wonderful events will follow, which is what we're seeing now.
Right.
But he said, Carol researched that land because he knew it was legally stolen by Public Law 280.
Exactly.
So I researched it, and then he presented that, because you need concrete evidence. You have to have evidence. So he proposed the name change at my daughter's school. At the end of the speech, he said, think about it. And my dad has this big booming voice. He's a big man. He goes, think about it. Someone here today could change the name of South Middle School to something Native American. Right. And you could have heard a pin drop. And at that time, the school principal was in the room. Her name was Dr. Besselo. You could have heard a pin drop. Nobody said anything. And, I kind of forgot. I was like, oh, my gosh. Well, we were hoping some little kid in the classroom would be like, get a petition and go around.
Right.
But we were hoping it was my daughter. But I had a meeting at Lawrence High School that same afternoon, and we wrapped up our meeting, and the teacher looked at me and said, hey, so what is this business I hear about your dad wanting to change the name of the school? She goes, I asked her how she heard about it. She said she heard about it from the internet. She said her best friend was a para over there, and they were all talking about it. Wow. I said, well, that's true. And she goes, well, why don't you? And she was still laughing. And she goes, well, why don't you just change the name of the gym? And I said, we want the whole thing.
Right.
And then my daughter looked at me and she goes, Mama, why didn't you just tell her we didn't donate just a gym? What's happening, we're seeing that there's more stress. I mean, the school right now, they're trying to look and find ways to teach Native American history and culture because, until that speech, nobody knew about Public Law 280. Or they didn't know that we weren't citizens until 1924. I mean, you have to go in and educate. And I had to tell people, my dad's a second-generation American. They don't get it.
And it really is a lot of the footwork that we all have as a burden as natives, and it's such a part of the struggle that we have to always just get people to the baseline knowledge.
You have to be an educator and a walking museum all the time. It's exhausting.
It is. We have to be these databases of every Native American experience, and we one of the things we have talked about in these interview series is kind of like this really cool environment that we have in Lawrence. But it has to still be said that these experiences and these negative experiences are still happening. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, despite that it should be.
Oh, absolutely. It's hard. It's hard to be Native here because my son, just maybe 4 years ago, he's a big guy.
Right.
He was jogging when we live in a nicer part of town, just outside on the outskirts of town, just south.
Mm-hmm.
It was the middle of the day. He's 6'4". He's really tall and big like me, and he's wearing I made him wear his jogging vest. He had to wear the reflective vest. You don't want to be like a dork. Middle of the day, he was jogging, and he got pulled over. The sheriff at the time, flipped on the siren and the lights and said, hey, aren't you a little far from town, son?
Jeez.
And so with this name change, I said, you know what? If it doesn't pass, then, it's going to be a win-win because the whole point was to pull back the veil. Everybody thinks it's this inclusive, open-minded town. It's not. There's a lot of work.